Well, alright, welcome back to As It Should Be. Paul Berlino here, and well, it's high time I did another episode of twin album covers. I think I've only done one episode, right? This is supposed to be a series. This is one of those instances where, I proclaim a brand new series and then I do one episode and then months and months go by and I don't do another one. Well, finally I'm doing another episode of twin album covers. And yeah, this is where I show you album covers that, are separated at birth, so to speak. And, I think some of them may be intentional, but a lot of them are not. Talking about things that are just like too close for comfort and it's not intentional. Or, I'm sorry, not openly intentional. It's not an homage, it's something that maybe somebody possibly tried to get away with something, or maybe they kind of thought, oh, it's just inspired by, but come on. Who you fool? Okay. Alright, well, let's get right into it. I'm gonna do maybe 5. I think I probably did like 7 on my last one. I'm gonna do 5 on this one, okay? And let's get into the first one right here, right now. Okay, so now this one is suggested by a viewer. On the first episode that I did of this, I got a bunch of comments, and I got a couple of suggestions of albums that I hadn't really thought about, that I hadn't, albums, the funny thing is these are albums that I'm aware of too. I didn't catch it, and these are really good suggestions. In fact, these are great suggestions. This is the first of 2 suggestions. Take 2. This is the first of 2 such suggestions I got from viewers. Now, this is submitted by Mike Hernandez, who commented on the first video, and he suggested, here's Little Richard, which I have in the background there, but I'll pop it up right here. Here's Little Richard from 1957 versus Andy Griffith's Just for Laughs from 1958. Now, I have no idea if this is intentional. I mean, I know that this is a comedy album from Andy Griffith. I know that he, it's a spoken word comedy album, and this is only a matter of months after the Little Richard album came out. He may have purposely been kind of lampooning the Little Richard album, but I'm really not sure. I don't know. It's funny. I mean, it's kind of crazy that I didn't really catch that myself, because I've seen this album a million times before, but for some reason I just never put 2 and 2 together, and that's an obvious 2 and 2 to put together. Thank you, Mike Hernandez. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe Andrew Griffith was a Little Richard fan, or maybe, who knows? Maybe he just thought Little Richard was ridiculous and he was making fun of him. I don't know, but either way, you cannot deny that those 2 album covers are basically separated at birth. Okay, now this is another viewer submitted idea. Okay, so now this is another viewer submitted suggestion, and it's another great one. This is George Harrison's Gone Troppo from 1982. And Paul McCartney's Egypt Station from 2018. All right, yeah. Talk about a pair up that I should have caught myself, but I didn't. And shout out to Ernest. Okay, this is his screen name. It's Ernest III 83, or is it Ernest LLL 83? I don't know. But you know who you are, Ernest. Anyway, we'll just call you Ernest from now on, all right? And, well, Ernest made this great suggestion, and, it seems like it should have been obvious enough, but Mr. Clueless, he didn't catch it. It took Ernest to show me how shit is. And, man, now, George Harrison's Gone Troppo, the cover was designed and put together by Legs Larry from the Bonzos. And, it's a pretty terrible album cover, and most people consider that a really terrible George Harrison album, too. I actually don't mind that record. I never really... on paper, I should hate it. It's a wash in really bad early 80s synthesizers, and... I don't know. It just has that cheap early 80s sound. But I really don't think it's that bad. I mean, I think it's a pretty decent collection of songs. I mean, I think it's a better collection of songs than some of his terrible 70s albums. I mean, my God. And yeah, I don't know. But the cover is what we're discussing, and the cover is definitely god-awful. The cover is as bad as most people consider the album itself to be. Now, Paul McCartney, now again, I don't know, certainly he was aware of the George Harrison album and knew that cover. I mean, was he thinking of the George Harrison album when he did this? Because McCartney himself did this cover. This is a 1988 painting that he did that was called Egypt Station. Like, he did this painting in 88 and he titled it Egypt Station, and then when he did 2018, his 2018 album, he decided to use this painting and call the album Egypt Station after the painting. Now, was he influenced or inspired by the George Harrison record? I don't know. It's not exact, but there's a definite similarity in the vibe and the style, and I mean, I don't know. But, okay, so on to the fact that I don't think the George Harrison album is bad. I also think the McCartney album is actually really, really good. I mean, I've never really heard anybody speak badly of Egypt Station. I think people generally, anybody who's kind of into later McCartney, I think is pretty happy with this record, and I've definitely always been happy with it. It has a lot of tracks on it that I don't like, but, these latter-day albums have a lot of tracks, period. So you could easily cut this down to a really solid, proper 40-minute single disc. I mean, there's definitely one good, solid, great McCartney album in there somewhere. And, his voice is getting rougher and rougher and rougher as time goes on. And, but I think the songs are pretty damn good on this. Especially the opening track. Oh, man. But that's for another video. In fact, I think I have discussed it already. But anyway, on to the next one. Okay, so this next one is one that only just came to mind just yesterday. This is a brand new addition to this list. I have a pretty, quite a list here of albums that I've kind of been adding to over time, and this is the most recent addition to the list. And, well, it is first Kiss, Destroyer, from 1976, and The Wiz soundtrack from 1978. Yeah. And, it's funny that I only just thought of it yesterday, because even in the 70s, when The Wiz was current, and, I was an 8-year-old kid when that came out, I kind of noticed it. I don't know if I really thought about it as directly, like, hey, that's exactly a ripoff of Destroyer. I think I just kind of went, oh, hey, I kind of realized it was like Destroyer, but I don't think I really thought about it as, as much as I'm thinking about it right now. Maybe it's because I wasn't making any YouTube videos back in 1978. That could be it. Anyway, I've kind of always really been aware of it. I mean, everything right down to Michael Jackson, doing like his pose with one leg up. I mean, it's so, and the way the gradient of the background, I mean, everything about it is just so, come on. It's pretty obvious. And this is not an homage to Kiss. This is definitely somebody kind of ripping off the idea. And I mean, to the point where I'm surprised that Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons didn't sue them. At least Gene Simmons. But yeah. But okay, obviously, as any Kiss geek knows, the cover painting for Destroyer was done by the late great Ken Kelly. He did that. He did that painting. Actually, he did 3 paintings. He did an initial painting for Kiss for the cover, and they were wearing their Alive outfits, because when he did when he did the initial painting, they were still wearing those outfits. Like, he hadn't seen the Destroyer outfits yet. So he hands in the painting. They're like, well, yeah, this is great, but we're not wearing these outfits anymore. It's like, well, okay, well, maybe give me pictures of you in the outfits you're wearing. Okay, all right. So he does a second painting, which is the painting that's on the album, and wearing the Destroyer outfits. And they paid him some flat fee, made him sign over the rights of the whole thing to them so they could use it forever without having to constantly pay him for every little thing they wanted to use it for. And, yeah. And then there was a time, when was it? Maybe 2012 or 2013, they did a reissue, the Kiss Destroyer Resurrected, where they wanted to use the Kiss Destroyer cover in a live outfits idea, but still they didn't use the original one that Ken Kelly did. He did a new painting, a new redo of Destroyer of them in their live outfits. So yeah, so there's 3 different Destroyer paintings by Ken Kelly. Now, yeah, the Wiz soundtrack, I don't actually have any info on this. I looked all over the place trying to find info. I don't know who did the painting. I don't know anything. I have no idea what the thinking was. Nothing. I just, all we have is the image and, what we know in our hearts, man. I do remember this record coming out, or I remember the movie coming out. The movie was well hyped, but it was a flop. The soundtrack was probably much more of a hit than the movie was, and there was a hit. They did a cover of Ease On Down the Road, and I remember my sister had the single for that, which I hated at the time. I couldn't stand it. She always played it, and she was always singing it, and I remember she had the single that had, on the label, it had the Yellow Brick Road label. Like, the whole label was just the yellow bricks. Kind of like how Pink Floyd The Wall's cover is just all white bricks. Yeah, the label for the Wiz record was all yellow bricks. That's what I remember. But, yeah, there you go. Okay, so next up is Jefferson Airplane's Crown of Creation from 1968. And, The Eliminators with Loving Explosion from 1974. Okay, yeah, I mean, how much more exact could you get? It's even basically the same exact picture. Well, it is the same picture, just slightly different graphic, very slightly. Now, the Jefferson Airplane album, the band photography was actually, and the overall design was done by Hiro, H-I-R-O. Hiro was a Japanese commercial photographer at the time, and now the bomb photo is usually assumed to be from Hiroshima. Take two. Anyway, it's assumed to be, from Hiroshima. And, but in fact, it's actually from one of the U.S. desert testing explosions. And I guess they had photographers out there to catch it all, for posterity, I guess, or maybe because they knew Jefferson Airplane needed an album cover. I don't know. But that's actually what it's from. And the Eliminators album, now, I first saw this, I just ran into it online. It was a record that I actually never saw in stores, or maybe I did, but it didn't catch my eye. Maybe I think it would have caught my eye because I would have noticed it looked like the Airplane album cover. So I must not have seen it out in the world, out in the wild, as they say. But I did run into it online, and it was like, holy Jesus, this is exactly Crown of Creation. And I thought it was a punk band. Like, if you look at the cover, I have them down right. I should probably have them down below right here. Yeah, it looks like a punk album, right? It's actually a mid-70s soul funk record. Like, this is let me go back to my notes here. This is a mid-70s soul funk band from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And they formed in high school in the mid-60s and issued just this one obscure album in 1974. And used the exact same photo that the Jefferson Airplane used. I mean, were they aware that the Jefferson Airplane used the photo? Were they Airplane fans? I don't know. I think it's just, I'm sure it was just a stock image, actually, even back when Jefferson Airplane used it. And there is actually a third cover. That's right. I'm going to show that down at the bottom here. Count Basie in 1958. Yes. And now this Count Basie album has 3 titles. Basie, E equals MC square, and The Atomic Mr. Basie. Yeah, I don't know enough about the album to know. I don't know which the original title is. I don't know why there are 3 different titles, but there are 3 different titles to the Count Basie album, and it uses the exact same stock image, from the testing explosion. And I'm sure there are probably even more out there that I don't even know about. I could probably do a whole episode of like 10 of these, probably. I'm going to guess. Again, because it's like, yeah, it's just an image that it was available to people. If you needed a mushroom cloud for your cover, there you go. Okay, so now we have Prince and the Revolution with Parade from 1986. And that is, Separated at Birth from the Psychedelic Furs with Midnight to Midnight from 1987. A mere months later. Now, the Prince album was pretty huge. Pretty much anybody who was at all cognizant of any pop music at the time knew that Prince image, I'm quite sure, right? And I always loved that album cover, by the way. That's one of my favorite Prince album covers. I love the simplicity of it. I think it's just striking with Prince doing that cover, with doing the pose, great outfit. His hair everything looks great. Great image, great graphic. Love that cover. Psychedelic Furs obviously thought quite a bit of it themselves, because I find it very difficult to imagine that they weren't basically just aping the Prince album. Now, it was designed and completely done by different people. I mean, okay, the Prince album, the photography was by Jeff Katz, and the art direction was Jeffrey Kent Iroff and Laura de la Puma. Okay, now those are the people who were involved in the Prince Parade cover. Now, Psychedelic Furs, photography was done by Michael Halsband, and the cover concept is credited to Nick Egan and Richard Butler. Richard Butler is the vocalist of Psychedelic Furs, but the actual design itself is solely credited to Nick Egan. Okay. Now, did it really take two guys? Did it take two heads, Nick Egan and Richard Butler, to put their heads together to come up with, hey, let's copy the Parade album? I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll do maybe they'll claim that they never saw the Prince album. I don't know about that. Like I said, especially in 1987, you would have known that cover. And I remember, actually, did I get Psychedelic? I feel like I had a promo copy that my friends at the record store gave me or whatever. I think I did, and I probably had it for like 5 minutes, and I wasn't really that into that album. The Parade album, on the other hand, was absolutely just one of my favorite albums of the year. Like, that album made such a huge impression on me. And that was, yeah, seriously, that's probably one of my favorite albums of the entire 80s, and that's one of the albums that made had the greatest impact on me in its day in the 80s. I mean, that album, as far as its impact on my life, mainly in its time, can't be overstated. But the Psychedelic Furs album, not so much. Okay, now these pair of records, I really have no information on the covers. I don't know who did the photography, I don't know who did the artwork, I don't know who did the design, who had the big concept. But the similarity of the covers is undeniable. And I've noticed this since the later released album first came out. And that is The Kinks, Preservation Act 2 from 1974, and Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds with Henry's Dream from 1992. Yeah, I remember I've been a Kinks, big Kinks fan since the early 80s. I got into the Kinks when I was around 12, 13 years old, and absolutely have been, they're one of my favorite bands, okay? So I was well familiar with Preservation Act 2. The Nick Cave album, actually never have heard, but I had a friend in the early 90s when this record came out, my friend Sean, shout out to Sean. He was, probably still is, a big Nick Cave fan, and he had that record. Well, he had the CD, and I always used to look at that and be like, And I remember pointing it out to Sean, and, he made some snarky remark, because Sean was always good with the snarky remarks. But in my travels over the years, I've never ever seen anybody else point this out, and I've just always thought, this is such an obvious, it's so obvious, because surely Nick Cave not only is familiar with the Kinks, but he's probably a fan of the Kinks. Honestly, no doubt he knows that cover. I mean, but I don't know, who do we go after for this? Who do we call out for this? I have no idea who did the photography, who did the concept, the design. I don't know. Whoever you are, come clean. Let us know who you are. And I don't know, because I don't actually have that record, and I never have had that record. I'm sure if I had a Nick Cave album in front of me, the information is there, but I don't have it. And I can't find the information online. The Kinks record, I have, but I don't have a copy here. So, I don't know. So all I know is someone is not on the up and up. Okay, well, there you go. I did 6 for you rather than 5. Yeah, when I got to the end of the 5th one, I thought, this video is going to be a little short. So I did a 6th one. I just kind of want to make sure I don't run out, because I only have so many. I'll come up with more, I'm sure, to add to the list, but I'm kind of also making sure that I have enough for another video after this. So yeah, I did 6, and yeah. But anyway, so thank you to everybody who's been subscribing. Anybody who hasn't yet subscribed, subscribe, will ya? And if you do, click the little bell if you want notifications. If you want to know when all the videos are coming out, you're going to have to click the bell and click all, or else you won't You won't get all of the notifications. But, you know, like and comment. You know, let me know if you have any. You know, I'm sure there are many that I'm missing, many that I may never think of that you guys are going, come on, have you ever, what about this one? Let me know in the comments, and I'll put it in the video, and I will give you a shout out. I will give you the credit. I won't pretend it's all me that I came up with it, you know. Unlike the people who designed these album covers. All right, so yeah, if you have any suggestions, definitely let me know in the comments. And come back on Thursday, because Crystal Durant and Tommy Von Voigt are going to be on hand, and we're going to be discussing our favorite singles from 1974. Yeah, so get ready for that. Okay, everybody, I will see you guys soon.